Hello and welcome to episode 99 of Communicast, the podcast dedicated to enhancing communication skills. I'm your host, Scott D'Amico, president of Communispond. Today I'm joined by Jennifer Dulski, founder and CEO of Rising Team. With leadership experience at some of the world's most influential tech companies, Yahoo, Google, Facebook, and Change.org, and now teaching at Stanford's Graduate School of Business, Jen brings a unique blend of operational excellence, empathy, and communication mastery. In this episode, we explore how listening unlocks leadership, why personalization is key to delivering feedback, and how to balance humanity and AI in today's workplace. Jen also shares her signature framework for clear communication, anchored in data and storytelling. Whether you're a new leader, a seasoned executive, or someone navigating the evolving landscape of work, you'll take away practical ideas to sharpen your communication and expand your impact. Let's dive in. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Glad to be here.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation. If you can, just to get things kicked off, maybe tell the listeners a little bit about you, your career journey, and the exciting work that you're doing today.
Sure. So I have a little bit of an unusual background to a career in tech, which is that I started my career as a high school teacher. So when we get talking about communication, there's a whole range of things to talk about. I ran a nonprofit and taught high school for 4 years, and then I have spent the next 25 years working in tech. So I have done stints leading big divisions at companies like Yahoo, Google, and Facebook. And for 5 years, I was also president and COO of Change.org, helping scale it around the world. And then I've done several startups, including my current one, which is called Rising Team. And we work with companies to help build high-performing, deeply connected teams using a mix of software and AI.
Fantastic. Well, we have something in common. I started my career as a high school teacher as well. I spent maybe 5 years, 4.5, 5 years in the classroom. I enjoyed it, but I realized I don't think I'm going to be able to do this for 30 years. So I made the transition into the training and learning and sales space. So what brought you from teaching over to tech? How did you make that leap?
Yeah, it's so funny. I used to say that too. I loved it. And I thought, I just don't know if I could do this for 40 years straight. I got into tech because I was looking for a way to scale positive impact. So it was clear to me that running a nonprofit, I could make a positive difference in people's lives. It was just very linear. I used to say we could raise twice the money and we could serve just about twice the students. And when the internet came about, I thought there's got to be a way to use technology to scale that impact to more people. And that's what led me to business school and then to a career in tech. I actually am back in the classroom now, though, too, because I teach now at the business school at Stanford. So I get to enjoy the tech side and the classroom side as well.
Oh, I love it. And, I always talk about those years I spent in the classroom, 4 or 5 years, were probably the most influential of my career when it comes to, one, honing communication skills, but then also leadership skills, right? Because especially at the high school level, if you're working with teenagers and you're not communicating effectively, they are going to let you know very quickly. And when it really just leadership is about understanding people, what motivates them, what drives them, right? Getting them to buy into civics and economics when they're 14, very challenging unless you find a way to find that motivation and that hook. So, as I think about your career and your journey, when it comes to communication skills, you've probably encountered some really strong communicators, right? From both in the classroom to your impressive career background, maybe some not so good ones, but when you hear that somebody is a really good communicator, what's the image that comes to mind for you?
It's a bit counterintuitive because I believe the best communicators are also the best listeners. They are the ones who understand most what it is, as you said, that drives people, motivates them, and can communicate in a way that is compelling to each individual person. So you said you got a lot of leadership lessons from your teaching days. I definitely did. I also learned a lot from my days as a coxswain on the rowing team, because in that sense, I had to communicate in real time in front of everyone else in a way that would motivate people who were already working really, really hard. So how do you push people beyond what they think they can do, give them real-time feedback in front of their peers? I learned very quickly that people really like to receive feedback in different ways, as an example. So, some people, it's interesting. So one of the premises behind Rising Team is that we need to give leaders tools to better understand the people they work with. If we don't ask them, if we don't learn about them, we won't know their preferences and what they want. And the crew example is really relevant here, because when you think about how people like to receive constructive feedback, we have a question in Rising Team that asks them that. And some people say, I like it really direct, just straight on. And other people say, I like some encouragement with my feedback. And I found out very quickly that to one person in the boat, I would say, you're too slow, speed it up, we're not going to get there. And to another person, I would say, you're almost there, just a little bit faster, you got this. It is the same feedback delivered in completely two different ways based on two different persons' preferences. And that, to me, is what makes a really great communicator, is someone who understands not just the audience as a whole, but each individual ideally, and what will motivate and resonate with each one.
There's so many lessons when it comes to leadership, when it applies to sports. But I think of rowing crew, you always hear the analogy, right? Everyone needs to be rowing in the right direction or in the same direction. And at the same time, but also that feedback that you're giving, it has to come in real time at the exact moment, because even a few second delay, if you hesitate on providing that feedback, can completely change the outcome of a race on that. So yeah, I love that. There's just so many parallels between the communication that you have to be there, understanding the people on your team, what's going to motivate this person is not going to motivate this person. And you get that from listening.
Yeah.
Throughout the season, throughout the time, asking those questions, really focusing on what's going to be important to them. And I agree, listening is a core foundational skill to effective communication, something that a lot of people still struggle with. What's something that someone listening this can do, that they want to focus on those listening skills? What's a little tip or a strategy that you found to be helpful?
The number one tip is just ask questions. So people sometimes, when they believe that they are trying to get a point across, or they're trying to even sell something, if you will, or pitch an idea, it's tempting for people to just go in and start with the idea. Here's the idea. Here's why I think it's important. If you first start with asking people what matters to them, you actually are able to craft your pitch or your idea in a way that will resonate even more. So as an example, it's very common in sales processes, as you know, to have a discovery section of your conversation, where you first start by saying, what are your pain points? What are your challenges? How are you thinking about this? And then when you say, I have something that might be able to help with that, you will come from a much stronger point because you understand the person's problem. So I would start by just asking questions. The other thing that happens oftentimes is people, when someone's talking to us, we are so commonly just thinking about the next thing we're going to say in response that we don't actually stop and really listen to what the person is saying. So sometimes I coach people to listen as if they have to repeat back. And the way to practice that is actually repeating back. So if you said to me, I was a high school teacher and getting people to focus on civics was hard, if I was listening well enough to be able to reflect back and I said something like, wow, I can't believe you taught high school civics, tell me more about that. That means I'm really, really listening to you. It might be I'm slightly less prepared for what I want to say back, but the chances are that what I say back will be more relevant to you if I really heard you in the first place.
Doing the playback, like you mentioned, is really so powerful for a couple of reasons. One, it allows you to confirm that your understanding was correct. Then also it signals to that person that you were listening, which is going to build up trust and build that relationship. Then it also does give your brain a little bit of time to process. As you're playing it back, your brain is going to process the response. And the other thing that I always encourage people when they're doing that is getting very comfortable with silence. it is 100% okay when somebody finishes speaking, give it a couple of seconds. Start practicing that in your conversations, whether it's on the phone, with friends, at home with family. It starts to feel more natural. And I've worked with people where I've been on the phone with them, and sometimes I thought they hung up on me because they were just quiet for so long, but they were truly processing. And once I got to know them, I realized that that was they were going to do that. But yeah, pause, process, playback. And those 3 Ps, it really, really will take those listening skills to the next level.
Yes. And it's such a good point about the pause, because some people, everybody just has a natural pace of the way that they speak and think. And for people, I, for instance, am the far E side of extrovert. And so I tend to process my thoughts out loud while I'm thinking. I don't often pause long in conversations. And I definitely work with people who like to process more. And if you don't pause, sometimes we'll miss what they have to say. Yeah, so I definitely have colleagues and also family members where if I don't pause, I actually miss something important that they were going to say. My father is like this, actually, where he's a great storyteller and he will tell amazing stories and he'll take long pauses while he's thinking. And sometimes I will start to speak even after maybe a minute or something, and he will say, "You interrupted me." I'll say, did not know you were still planning to say something. But, understanding, people's different sort of approach really helps a lot.
So, Jen, with the work that you're doing today, what are you seeing out there? Like, what are some of the key communication skills that are really mission critical to be successful in the workplace today? Whether it is just from your own team or clients that you work with, what are some common trends that are coming up or skills that are lacking out there?
Well, the first thing I would say is empathy is really critical. And especially in a world where the workplace has changed so dramatically. So we used to be everyone in an office. Now we are at a minimum hybrid, probably globally distributed with our team. So we're not seeing people in person as much. We have AI entering the workforce. We also have a much more multi-generational workforce. And so the need to be empathetic and to really understand other people is much more important than it has been in a long time. And this is really the primary reason we built Rising Team, is because usually leaders at the very senior level get a lot of support with this. They often have executive coaches. They're, sent to amazing trainings or trained, I'm sure, by people like you, and have facilitators coming in. And then the further out you go in organizations, the less support people have. And so our goal was to build tools to help leaders at any level really understand their teams better, learn their preferences, learn their natural talents, how they like to be appreciated, how they like to give feedback. And the more people can understand about that, the more empathy they show, and the more engaged and likely to stay at the company and on their teams. So it actually ends up driving team performance, productivity, retention, and all those things. And empathy is at the core. The second thing I would say is that learning agility is more important than ever. We are in a world where I say soft skills are the new hard skills, because the hard skills are changing so fast that you can't possibly get up to speed fast enough on any one hard skill and think it will drive your career. You have to be able to just learn quickly to go from one skill to the next. And especially with AI and how rapidly it's changing, I think AI is advancing at something like 10x the pace of Moore's law. So just much, much faster than anything we've ever seen before. And so it's empathy, retaining your humanity, learning quickly. And then, as I do believe that humanity is the final core skill in the workplace today, because AI is moving so fast. We really need to think about both how to leverage it and also how not to be consumed by it. So one example, we were lamenting it this last week, because I actually love to write. I am a big fan of the M dash in writing. If people don't know, the sort of extra long hyphen, I have always used it a lot in my writing. And now AI uses it so commonly. So ChatGPT, when you ask for help, it will write and it will often use an M dash. And so I have had to think twice about using it in my writing now. I actually take it out a lot more than I leave it in, because people, when they look at things I wrote, they assume AI wrote it because it has certain features. And so it's just so important, again, to take advantage of it and help us get faster and smarter and so forth, and also to retain our humanity alongside it.
With humanity and empathy, I think are going to be really foundational skills moving forward as we continue on in this age of AI, because those are the people that I think are really going to, one, stand out, but then also be able to really fully leverage tools like AI in a meaningful way. And we talk a lot about, with communication skills, moving into this new era of agentic AI and generative AI, where communication skills I think are going to be even more important, because one, understanding not only how to prompt the tools, build the tools in a way that makes sense for what you want to get out of it, but then being able to take what you get out of these tools and communicate them in an effective way to others. I think is still not going away, so that if you know how to listen and you are empathetic, so you take that listening of what you've understood about others and then put it into practice through your leadership principles, retain the humanity, and then you have AI as a tool. That's kind of me, the full package of what that next gen leader looks like.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And a couple examples come to mind there when I think about that, the idea of communicating with a combination of AI support and humanity. One is when, for instance, when we hire people, we get a lot, and we ask people to answer a couple questions as part of their job application. A lot of companies now actually just use AI to sort through resumes and job applications in the first place. We actually have humans review them. But one of the things we saw was that there was a lot of exact similarity in the responses, which was a clear signal, even to human eyes, even without having AI review them, that they had been written by AI. And so I always tell people, it's fine to start with AI. It's even a good idea to start with AI. You just need to make it your own after that, because I basically can just put aside all of the applications that come in that were almost identical, because they used AI and did no editing afterwards. The other thing I think about is I mentioned I teach this class at Stanford, and there's now a rule, at least at the business school, where instructors and professors, we cannot limit the use of AI in our classes. Other than for in-class exams, we have to allow the use of AI for homework preparation and all these other things. So my class is case-based, and we have students prepare the cases and then role play in class how they would handle that situation. And it is very possible that they can write their initial script using AI. And many of them do. And you can coach it to do all the things that we're teaching in class. You can write the prompts. For instance, I use something I call the 2 C's, clarity and compassion. You can prompt AI to be clear and compassionate. The challenge is, as soon as you get into a role play with a real human being, it's not going to help you that much. Like, until we have AI implanted in our brain and actually speaking for us, it can help you get started. It just doesn't help you finish. You still need that empathetic human ability to listen and care about people, to have a real conversation.
For me, it's a tool, just like anything else. When PowerPoint came out, and as people just started using that, went from delivering speeches, now you're looking at the back of somebody's head because they're staring at their screen, because they just want to rely on their slides, right? Just like you can't rely on AI to do everything for you, right? Because as you start interacting with a human, it changes. If I'm presenting to an audience and I'm staring at my slides the whole time, I'm going to lose that audience. It's really, the technology is working against me rather than for me. Jen, as you think about your career journey and the success that you've had, what's been kind of the key communication skill? If I had to hold you to one, right, said, what's kind of that key communication skill that really has helped you to get to where you are today? What would that be?
So I have a formula I use for good, clear communication. So I would say if I had to say it's just one, it is clarity of communication. So not too jargony, something everybody can understand. And my formula is about data plus storytelling. So I believe really the best communication is based in data. I was a statistics TA. I love, being able to persuade people with reasons why things matter and data that it's working. And even at Rising Team, a lot of folks who build in the kind of learning space focus on things like how much their products get used. I care a lot, not only about whether people are using it, but whether it actually works. So things like, does it drive engagement? Does it keep people at your company longer, et cetera? So that's part of it. But the other part is really storytelling. If all you do is show numbers and communicate clearly, it's not sufficient. The way we inspire people is by telling stories, and it might be a real personal example. I often, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see I share a lot of very vulnerable personal stories. And it might be a story just about a customer or something, again, about your idea. So clear communication with data and storytelling is the winning formula, I think.
It's a great formula. And we recently launched a course on business storytelling. And one of the key modules in there is telling stories with data. How do you do it? As you mentioned, part of it is you need to have a point of view on the data. Like, what's my thought on this? You need to make sure you're not skewing the data based on the visuals that you use. You need to have some sort of story, whether it is an anecdote that's from a personal thing that happened to you that you can make that tie in. Those are very powerful. Or it can very be simply, this is how a customer was doing it. So you paint the picture there. But I think stories for the sake of stories don't really do much. Data, just putting data up there is going to confuse a lot of people. But when you combine the two, that's really when you can move people to action, is combining the stories with the data and having a clear point of view on it.
Yeah.
Earlier, Jen, you mentioned your father being a great storyteller. Yeah, I can tell from our conversation, you like to incorporate stories and you use it on some of your social posts. Who's been someone from throughout your career, family, friend, colleague, boss, whatever it may be, who's had an influence on your communication style?
I have so many people. I use a mantra that every person is a teacher and every experience is a lesson. So I could, in fact, when I first started writing on LinkedIn, I used to start, I wrote almost everything, 5 lessons I learned from ... And I would just go through my life and think about people and experiences, and I could easily pull out the lessons. When I think about my communication in particular, there are 3 people who come to mind. The first is Joe DePrisco, who was my high school English teacher. And he taught me about clear communication. And he was such a stickler. Sometimes the people who are the hardest on us teach us the most. And there are so many lessons still swimming in my head today about where to put a comma. And if you say not only, you have to say, but also, and all of these things, the lessons that I took from him, the highest praise. I remember one day I wrote a LinkedIn post about lessons we could learn from the 49ers having just lost the Super Bowl. I'm also a big 49er fan. And Joe actually commented on my post that he enjoyed it. And it was like the highlight moment of my life. So Joe's first. The second person is an early boss I had, the head of school when I was a high school teacher, a guy named Ham Clark. And he was the first person who really taught me about the power of listening. I remember going on my job interview with him. I was a senior in college, so I was still maybe 20 years old. And I went into my interview and he started asking me questions, and he had a yellow legal notepad and he was just vigorously taking notes while I talked. And I remember just feeling very surprised that someone who was that much more experienced than me would really want to listen to what I had to say. And it was a very powerful shift in the way I thought about listening as a leadership skill. And then the third person who comes to mind is Cammie Dunaway. She was the CMO at Yahoo when I was coming up through the marketing ranks. And she taught me about how to paint a really inspiring vision. So she came into our company as an executive from Frito-Lay. And, when you come in as a leader of a new org, especially those first early communications are so important. And she pulled the whole org together and told stories about her life and herself personally, and then painted a really interesting vision for where we were going. And it was definitely something I looked up to as a type of communication I wanted to emulate.
Wow, that's fantastic to have so many folks like that throughout your career, your life, that had such an impact on you. And a couple of things jumped out to me there. Just one is, I think it's really important for people to listen, especially leaders that are listening to this, the outsized impact that you can have on somebody's life just by taking the time, investing in them, providing them opportunities to learn and to grow. And then the other thing that you mentioned that really resonated with me is that really, in essence, everyone is a teacher and everything truly is a teachable or a learning opportunity, whether it's good or bad.
Yes.
One of the early guests on this show said something that stuck with me, and it was bloom where you are planted.
Yes.
Not everybody's fortunate to have an amazing boss all the time. You may be stuck with a bad one for quite a while where you can't get out of that situation. What can you take from that environment? Can I learn what not to do? Can I learn from some other people around me? So this idea, every scenario you're in, whether it's good or bad, you can learn from it and then apply those principles moving forward.
That's right. And I have maybe the not as pretty version of that, but people say the grass is greener, and I say, and I won't use the swear word here, but there's poop on all the grass, right?
Yes.
So like, if you think there's going to be some better, perfect utopia somewhere else, it's not true. And so the bloom where you're planted means we also have the opportunity ourselves to clean up the poop and to make whatever space we're in more beautiful. And that is, and sometimes even the poop can make it, they're fertilizer. So
there you go, the fertilizer. Yes.
Analogy, but yeah, we have the opportunity, and that's actually when you were talking about the skills that it takes to succeed. I talked about empathy, I talked about humanity and learning agility. The last one, if I were to add one, is initiative, because the people who are the most successful are the ones who bring ideas forward, solve problems when they see them, raise their hand if something needs to be done. And that is also a core skill of being successful.
That's actually a very nice segue to what I wanted to finish with, was just really around closing pieces of advice. The initiative one, I absolutely love. That's something that really helped me throughout my career, getting on steering committees, kind of informally mentoring other people throughout my time when I was a junior manager. So, I mean, as we're wrapping up here, what piece of closing advice would you have for somebody listening to this, really just around, the importance of the skills that we talked about today, or things that they can do to develop them, or steps that they can take if they want to grow in their career?
Yeah. Well, let's start with the initiative piece, because that is a key element. You do not need to be in a senior role to bring forward good ideas and to volunteer to help when you see things that need fixing. And so that is probably my number one piece of advice: is raise your hand, volunteer to help, bring forward ideas, even if, and my most recent LinkedIn post was about this, even if your idea is a bad one, or the idea doesn't go forward, the pitch doesn't win, you still learn so much from the act of putting those ideas together. So try not to be afraid in those moments, just go for it. There really is very little to lose, even if you don't get the job you applied for, you don't win, aren't able to raise the money for your startup, whatever those things are. There's so much learning. And the second thing I would say is focus on relationship building. So the power of networks is exponential over time. So early in our careers, we can just think of it as making friends, learning to understand people, getting to know them. It helps in so many ways. First, as we talked about, it helps your communication. In fact, in my class, I use an acronym I call WIFM, which is what's in it for me, which almost anyone you're talking to, if you're trying to persuade them to do you a favor or anything, they want to know what's in it for them. So, and part of that is understanding who they are. And again, that goes back to trying to find out their preferences and their talents, what brings them joy, et cetera. And early in our careers, those networks will be helpful because they're just great connections. They become friends. Over time, they compound. I think about the people who were my friends early in the days of, my Yahoo career, for instance, and now those people are the CEO of LinkedIn and the CMO of KFC, and they go on to do amazing things, and we still are close and will do anything for each other. So have empathy, build those relationships, compound the power of your network, and then learn as much as you can. Things change a lot, and the people who are the most adaptable will be the most successful. So if I look at my career, I started in teaching and nonprofit. I got into tech. I started in marketing. I moved into product development. I've done e-commerce. I've done local. I've done marketplaces. I now run a SaaS company. The information I've had to learn over time to understand the categories and the functions and the people and the companies has changed so much. So my real core skill is just being able to learn quickly and adapt to those things.
So take initiative, build relationships, and it's funny, on the meeting I was on before this, the movie, which is now on Broadway, Glengarry Glen Ross came up, and there's that famous line of always be closing. So I'll tweak it to always be learning.
Always be learning. Yeah.
Take new things on. You will be surprised when you learn something. You file it away and forget about it. 2 years later, that piece of information comes in. Yes. Very handy. Outstanding advice. Yes.
Especially in the spirit of both trying new things, learning new things, and having initiative. My favorite professor in college, Tom Gilovich, did research about regret. And he said he found that in the short term, people tend to regret acts of commission, things they do that they wish they hadn't done. Like, oh God, I interviewed for that job and I didn't get it. But in the long term, when we look back at our lives, we have far greater regret for the errors of omission, things we didn't try and wish we had. So, I wish I had interviewed for that job. What if I had gotten it? It might have changed my life. And so that's something I use a lot when I think about whether to try something new, whether to bring forward an idea is, will I regret if I didn't at least go for it? And that's another thing that can be helpful as you look at making choices in your career.
That's a fantastic lens of which to look through when you're thinking about making a decision. Will I regret this if I don't do it? Absolutely love that. Jen, really appreciate you taking time to chat with me today. If people want to connect with you, learn more about what you're doing, learn more about Rising Team, what's the best way to do that?
So Rising Team is risingteam.com, and I am at J Dulski on LinkedIn and everywhere else, X and others.
Perfect. I'll be sure to put links to all of those in the show notes for those of you listening. If you want to connect with Jen and learn more about her organization, the great work you can do, and you can find them there. Jen, thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Special thanks again to my guest, Jennifer Dulski, for joining us and sharing her insights on effective feedback, building high-performing teams, and the power of clear, personalized communication. As we wrap up, remember that communication mastery is not innate. It's earned through intentional practice, pause, and purposeful listening. Subscribe to Communicast so that you can continue benefiting from future episodes with compelling guests like Jen. If you found value in today's conversation, I'd be grateful if you'd leave a rating or review. It helps us grow and reach listeners like you. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great day.